Okay. Thank you. Welcome, everyone. We're going to call this meeting to order now. It is 7:27 p.m. on August 3rd, 2023, and this is a public meeting of the City of Portland Police Accountability Commission. My name is Victoria, and I will be your facilitator with Facilitator Ayomide too. It is a pleasure to be here with you. If the Spanish language interpreters, Lisette y Carolina, can please give the information on the Spanish language interpretation?
Esta es una junta pública sujeta a las leyes estatales de Oregon y las reglas administrativas de la ciudad de Portland y será grabada. Habrá interpretación disponible al español. Para poder escuchar en español, por favor, oprimir el icono del globo, luego interpretación y seleccione español ES. Continuará viendo la junta, pero escuchará al intérprete. Por favor, denos un minuto en lo que se habilita la función.
Muchas gracias. The city also offers ASL interpretation, which is being provided by Christine and Maria. Please pin their video feed to see their interpretation throughout the meeting. The closed captioning is turned on in Zoom as another means of assistance. Please note that this is an automatic captioning service and it is not always accurate. The city supports access to meetings of the Police Accountability Commission and can provide other language support as well. Please email in advance of future public meetings, either as a response to a public meeting notice or directly to Police Accountability at portlandoregon.gov to ask for other access assistance, including interpretation into other languages. This meeting is a public meeting subject to City of Portland Administrative Code and Oregon State Law and is being recorded. For this meeting, the chat function is enabled for commission members to communicate with each other. Members of the public will be able to ask questions using Zoom Q&A feature. As the commissioners are presenting and or discussing things, if attendees have questions, please feel free to submit them through the Q&A. We hope to use this feature to help guide our conversation during the meeting and future meetings agenda topics. We'd like to be clear that not all questions will be answered during the meeting, but if answered, both the question and answer will be visible to you and will become part of the meeting record. To access this feature, just click on the Q&A icon in the middle of your screen. Now I will pass it to Co-Chair Dan for the land acknowledgement displayed at the City Hall.
Thank you, Facilitator Lara. I'm Dan Handelman. I use he, him pronouns. I'm one of the three co-chairs of this final phase of our commission's work. And I say this every time, but this is what the city has as their land acknowledgement. I would write something stronger if I were writing it. We acknowledge that the rivers, lakes, streams, and lands of the lower Willamette River rest upon the occupied territories of the Multnomah, Wasco, Cowlitz, Calumet, Clackamas, Chinook, Tualatin, Kalapuya, Molalla, and many other tribes. We recognize the many villages, traditions, cultures, and relationships that existed along the river since time immemorial. We recognize these tribes stewarded these lands and rivers since time immemorial for future generations. We recognize and undertake responsibility for the destruction of the river and land, of traditional food sources, sacred places, and multifaceted ways of life. We acknowledge the economic and social values that enabled the harm to the river, including systemic racism, classism, and other systems of oppression that perpetuated harm against Black, Indigenous, and immigrant communities along the river. With this acknowledgement, we commit to honoring and learning from the past and working towards a more equitable and sustainable future for the lower Willamette River. We commit to seeking solutions that acknowledge the inequities of the past, socioeconomic policies, and the harm done to people and our relationships to these lands and waters. Thanks.
Thank you, Co-Chair Dan. Our next item and our agenda is to review community agreements. I want to remind us 3 pages, and after that, I will ask the question. Now I'm gonna ask the question, do we all commit to following the community agreements for today's meeting and to gently calling our colleagues and collaborators if needed? Yeah, I can see your hands. Thank you very much. Now I will pass it to Co-Chair Sima to talk about and discuss the timeline.
Yes, thank you. Greetings, everybody. Simab Husseini, he, him, his, current phase co-chair. And just kind of discussing the timeline as you guys look at the screen right now. The commission has split its work into 6 phases, and it's now in the concluding phase of the work, which focuses on taking everything that was done in the previous phases and covering it or converting it into proposed changes to the city code and the settlement agreement. And also approving those for council consideration along with a report. The commission is going to work until the end of next month, August 31st, or this month, I should say, sorry. Time flies. It's already August. So we have just a few weeks left in our work. And what we do is that once we wrap up, shortly thereafter, hopefully soon in September, at some point, we will present our proposals to the City Council for their consideration and approval after we finish meeting. The outcome, there we go, the outcome of the documents for the Police Accountability Commission that we're creating in this phase include, as you see, proposed changes to the City Council code, final reports of the commission from the PAC, which would include explanations and rationale for the legal text, recommendations for the board's bylaws or other bureau policies, recommended changes to the settlement agreement, and recommendations to other levels of government, such as the City Council. And in this slide, this is our concluding phase flowchart, as you see. This slide will project the plan for our concluding phase of the Police Accountability Commission. So this slide is for the members of the public to be able to understand how the commission gets from now through the end of the phase. The blue boxes indicate where the public meetings are currently taking place, and then the pink boxes below that are the consultations with the commission's attorneys. So today's meeting falls into the blue boxes with the purple border around it. And you'll see it located in the center of the screen right there. And in the next slide, there we go. Following today, these are the upcoming meetings of the commission that we want to highlight. Next Monday, August 7th, there is an executive session of the full commission and no public meeting. There's a community information session on August 12th from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. It'll be hybrid with an in-person location at Lentz Commons, again, with a Zoom option. And yeah, so heading into today's meeting's purpose, we're going to continue reviewing several documents that might be useful in revising previous decisions and documents. So looking at your current screen right now, these documents will include the final checklist of tasks, the community input tracker, discussion group reports, equity reviews, values and goals, and staff suggestions based off of gaps or contradictions or technical edits. The legal review and consultation will be discussed during the executive session, and including the one held earlier today. There'll be time to discuss proposed changes to the areas of agreement on officer accountability, and if time permits, on any other previous Police Accountability Commission agreements. Prior to discussion on proposed changes, the commission will review its own values and goals. After discussing, but before making a decision, the commission will hear public comment. Later today, we will also have general public comment.
Thank you, Co-Chair Simab. Now I will pass it to staff to give an update about community engagement.
Thank you, Victoria. My name is Austin Foster. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the Community Engagement and Communications Coordinator for the Police Accountability Commission. Thanks for the couple people in the audience who are joining us tonight. I want to just let you know a little bit more details about the next upcoming event that Co-Chair CMOB was letting you all know about. So it's going to be at the Lentz Commons building. And I also have an RSVP link that I'll put in the chat in case you are interested in going. It's going to be from 10 a.m. to noon in that building, and we're going to have coffee and pastries. So commissioners, also tell your people please to come out and get involved. We know this is kind of the home stretch here, so we really want to just like be in touch and have those conversations with as many community members as possible. So I'll go ahead and put the RSVP into the chat, and then also want to let you all know that we are going to be doing a high schoolers and family focused community engagement event. So if you have any high schoolers or even middle schoolers in your life, let's get those families involved as well. And that event is going to be on Friday the 18th from 4 to 6 p.m. And it's actually going to be at the Apano building, which is on 82nd and Division. And I'll send you all of that in an email so you don't have to remember that. But definitely want to let people in the audience who are listening know about those next two events. So we've got one on the 12th open to everybody, 10 a.m. And I'll put the RSVP link in the chat. And then we've got that one on the 18th that's going to be focused on high schoolers and their families and things like that. And then if you aren't able to come on the 12th and you are not a family, high schooler focused family, I guess, we will have our last community engagement event open to the public will be August 22nd. And that one's going to be in the evening at Plaza 122, which is in the Mill Park area neighborhood. So that's a lot of info, but I'll put it all in the chat. And then just want to remind people who are watching that if you're not feeling comfortable putting any questions or anything into the chat tonight, or into the Q&A, I will also add in the link for public comment. So you can submit public comment and that will go directly to the commissioners. And then also want to let you know that you can sign up for our email list, and I'll put that link in the chat as well. And that's a good way to just kind of stay in the know with what's going on with our events, and also know about general meeting updates and when the PAC will be presenting to City Council next month, the code package and report. So yeah, as always, please reach out to us at policeaccountability@portlandoregon.gov if you have any questions, or you can reach out to myself as well. And thank you all for being here.
Thank you, Austin. Thank you. Sounds like a very excited opportunities to invite friends and family. Thank you. Before we move to discussing documents, inputs, and more, we will review values and goals. And for this, I will pass it to the co-chair, Charlie, to guide us in this part of the agenda. Thank you. Chair Charlie, you are on mute.
Oh, there we go. Thanks,
Thank
Victoria. Charlie Michelle Wesley, PAC co-chair and commissioner. So I already read the introduction that we created for the goals and values. So I've just asked, let those land on your conscience as we go through this, and reviewing the police, officer accountability document, potentially the transition document, and if we have time, some other documents. At this time, if anybody would like to highlight a particular goal and value with the values, please do now as we go over the officer accountability document. Anyone, maybe someone who was on the committee, someone who co-chaired other than me? Don't make me call on you. Just kidding. Yes, co-chair Commissioner Dan.
I can take a hint. Well, I think the two key issues here are that we want, can you scroll back up again, staff? I'm sorry. While trying to follow my co-chair's leader. We want to ensure fair and just outcome for all, irrespective of identity. So we want to have a system that, you know, holds officers accountable. And then if you scroll down again, we want to have this transparency. And so this is kind of something we'll be talking about when we are looking at the areas of agreement. Thanks. Oh, and community-centered as well.
Thank you, co-chair Commissioner Dan Handelman. Anyone else?
Yes.
Oh, Angie. Oh,
Angie.
sorry.
No, it's okay. It's okay, Co-Chair.
No worries. Commissioner Charlie, you knew that I was going to have some input. As I said at the last meeting, my one big goal is transparency. I really want us to work, obviously, to work hard to reach all of these values and goals and success criteria, but transparency after going to the Northwest Family Circle and hearing about how those families had so many problems trying to get information. My heart was broken for them, and I want the transparency for these victims. So thank you.
Thank you. Co-Chair Sima?
Yeah, so I agree with Commissioner Tomlinson and Commissioner Handelman. Transparency and trustworthiness is incredibly important simply because it's also one of the broadest. It has it's defined itself in 8 different ways on this form. I would also highlight number 6, if you guys can scroll down, just for the sake of planting a seed. A lot of, we know it really speaks for itself, a continual effectiveness, but oftentimes under the guise of continual effectiveness, things are often diluted and intentionally broken until it's no longer operable. And just kind of focusing on what's currently happening around Portland street response, we don't want something like that to affect us either in such a negative way where it's being intentionally broken. So really be aware of how important also continual effectiveness is, because we not only need to be effective coming out the gate, the expectancy has been raised on us by being asked, by being challenged about our 100% effectiveness compared to any other bar set for other agencies, particularly policing. So the bar is raised really high for us, and we need to be able to make sure that we're focused on not allowing things to hamper our effectiveness in the name of effectiveness. A little ironic statement there, but that's a concern of mine in the future, and I hope that we are able to really fight hard, maintain what we're able to help develop for this board, and kind of help be there and guide as torchbearers for the process as it tends to take on critical feedback in the future.
Thank you, Co-Chair Sima. Commissioner Monica?
Yeah, can we go up to number 2, please, for a sec? I want to, in number 2, 3, a PPV that is not built on white supremacy, an oversight system that will change systemically racist policies and practices in policing. I'm having a lot of internal struggle in that we're building a system within a white supremacist system. And I just want to point that out. There's things we're encountering, barriers we're experiencing that are white supremacy, that are making our job harder. And we must be creative in our solutions so that we can be successful.
Thank you, Commissioner Monica. Co-Chair Charlie.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Monica. Along those lines, I just wanted to say, like, these are we continue to demand these because they don't exist, right? But we have to continue to do our best to try to weave these into everything we create going forward, and in these documents as well, even though we know we're up against huge barriers to it, but we just have to keep plugging away and chipping away and frame this as possibilities if we approach things if we approach things in a way that we believe this can happen. It's a shame that we have to fight so hard for all these when they should just exist. I get that. Thank you.
Thank you, Co-Chair Charlie. Anybody else? Any of the values and goals that you would like to review or comment? Okay, then we can continue with our agenda if anybody else need any. Okay, next item on the agenda is the open discussion and is review of checklist, discussion groups report, community input tracker, equity review, etc. Next, members can discuss anything that came up in their document review that you like to mention and discuss in the context of possible changing your previous decision on areas of agreement. Later this meeting, the PAC will have a chance to revisit the areas of agreement, starting with officer accountability. If we can go to slide 16, in order to start a discussion, we ask you to follow our normal discussion rules. Please be brief each time you speak, even though you can speak multiple times. Please be facilitator and remember we use a weighted stack in our discussions. And finally, please be forward-looking in your comments. Any of the co-chairs would like to get us started? Yes, co-chair Dan, go ahead.
Sure. Hi, and I apologize for having the background noise on my audio before I turned off the machine that was making that. Anyway, so there is a stack of documents that we are trying to go over in this final month to make sure that everything we do and send to City Council meets all the requirements that they asked of us, that we have covered all the things that we put in our garden plot along the way, that the equity review there are 2 equity reviews that are being done for us today, that we meet all those standards, or the ones that we feel are appropriate. This is true in all these cases, well, except with the City Council, we have to deliver everything they want. The discussion group reports that were generated from various communities that talked to consultants about their hopes for the new system, and so forth. So several people have volunteered to do some of these You know, it's not meaning those are the only people that have to look at them. We're just trying to make it so that not everybody has to read 50 documents. So to the extent where you've been assigned to something, and if you have something to relay, either now or if, you know, when we get back to another discussion later, that might affect our decision making as we are going to be looking at the code pretty soon. It's a helpful time to do that. And I'm just going to tell you that I did get a breakdown about the accountability community tracker, the community comment tracker, from one of the commissioners that was doing that work, who's not here tonight. And I looked through it, and I don't think there's anything specific in there to add to the accountability document based on that. It's just more people want to see a system where officers are held accountable and that people are, you know, that who help them are trauma informed. And I think we already have that included in our vision. So, and if any other co-chair has something to add, please do that. But I think staff has kind of the broad picture on all this.
Any comments from the co-chairs or the commissioners? Yes, staff?
Just wanted to note that there is more coming to update some of those documents, in particular the community input tracker. So if anyone's listening at home and thinking, is it still possible to give input? It is. Please do. It will be circulated all the way through the end of this process. Just wanted to note that.
Thank you, staff. If there is no additional comments, then we can, oh yes, co-chair Dan.
I will, either I will or staff will post in the most recent list of what's available to look at and who's already said they would do what for the other commissioners to look at.
Thank you. Yes, Commissioner Monica.
So would this be a good time to give a report on the document that was created for the Latino community? I can do that. I read it today.
Yes,
Commissioner. Is there any chance you could share it? Do you have it pulled up? Because I could share it. I have it pulled up. Should I share it?
The discussion group on report on that you were reporting back on?
Yeah.
Yeah, if you can or we can, whichever you prefer.
I'll share it. I have it pulled up here. So I'm just pulling up. I'm hoping you can see this. I'm just pulling up the last page, which is basically my gosh, the crows are going crazy in my neighborhood. A summary of these. These were 14 individuals from the Latino community, Spanish speaking, that were interviewed, paid for the interviews. I think these 14 community members want what we all agree on, build trust and mutual respect between police department and the communities they serve, increase training for officers. They specifically talked about de-escalation training and mental health and dealing with communities suffering houselessness and mental health. Increasing the use of dialogue to de-escalate difficult situations, perform investigations on police officers' background and previous history to ensure that complaints receive investigation, follow up with the people about their complaints promptly, ensure transparency and police misconduct investigations, create more accessible and inclusive systems. So different ways of being able to access putting in complaints for communities that speak different languages. And they were requesting something like a social worker, which is what I am going to say is what we are calling our advocates for complainants. I think that was something that came up for them. Ensure that the new site, the new system is accessible, not only for people that speak English, but also people that speak other languages. Further outreach about the new system for the Spanish-speaking communities so that the community knows that this new system is in place. And and creating spaces where the Police Accountability Commission and the future board can learn from the communities that they so that the communities are able to serve in the board, have more outreach, so and opportunities to serve on the board.
Thank you, Commissioner Monica.
Nothing that was super surprising or new for us.
Oh, sorry, you were cutting off a little bit at the end, but I think we were able to listen. Yes. Thank you, Commissioner.
Did I lose you all in the middle of that?
At the end where you were lagging or cutting off at the end. I think we lose you for a moment, but I think we were able to listen when you were reporting. Thank you, Monica. Thank you, Commissioner Monica. Is there any additional comments? Okay, if we don't have any additional comments, let's go to the next item in the agenda. And the next item on the agenda is revisions and updates to previous PAC agreements. And I will pass it to the co-chairs.
Thank you again, and thank you, Commissioner Arce, for that brief recap of the discussion group document. I'm hoping we can hear that about the other ones when we have chance, when other people have had a chance to look at them. Oh, and by the way, the list that was in the chat, there's a couple of tweaks to that need to be made, but we'll deal with that later. Okay, so tonight we're looking at two different documents that we have listed for today. If anybody wants to bring another one up, we can do that, but we're probably going to come back to all of them after we get the full code sent to us to make sure that our areas of agreement match with what we're actually proposing to council. So the first one is the officer accountability document, and as listed here, the other documents are that we've already looked at: access information, structural oversight, board membership, oversight staff, reporting and transparency and broader system, and transition plan we have not looked at yet in this kind of second round, so we'll do that next, really brief. And staff, if you can bring up the officer accountability areas of agreement. I have flagged a couple of sections that I think we have some language for, and Commissioner Gwen sent in some suggestions too. So there's at least 4 areas where we have to stop and look at them, but anybody else who has ideas as we go along, either make a note of it or stop me as I'm trying to run us through the document as quickly as possible, because we are running out of time literally tonight and in the big sense. All right, so this is our table of contents, so let's scroll down past that. We have an introductory section, which we've done most of our documents. Okay, and now let's go on to section A. Oh, well, first the definitions. This is important. Oh, I forgot about that. Okay, we have to come back to that definition that was added. It's a very broad. So actually, there's 5 things to look at, and that's something that's going to echo throughout the document, the definition of the case. But we'll come back to that after we get through the whole document. So let's look at section A. Section A is about the complaint navigators. I think that what we are doing now is just calling them complaint navigators because there's been enough confusion around the word advocate, whether or not that means that people are getting lawyers or something. So, so advocate is now the alternative name, whereas complaint navigator is the primary name is being used, kind of backwards to how we had it. I think that was more of a technical fix that the staff put in, but we have the final say. So if you don't like it, we can talk about that. So let's go on to the next one. Oh yeah, so it talks about who can file and ways to file complaints and providing information to complainants. and types of conduct that the board will address. So that's again some language cleanup there that maybe we should come back to that too, just to make sure that everybody's okay with it. Complaints not involving community members, preliminary investigations. There's a couple little technical fixes there too. Dismissals. This is a long document, by the way. And section B is about the investigations. Oh, no, the other B, that big B, yeah. Referral, criminal investigations, basic elements of misconduct investigation. Okay, B3 is long way down. Oh, there it is, timelines to complete investigations. B4, investigations of deadly force, and there's something in here that we addressed in access information that we'll get to when we go through our changes. B5, information provided to officers, and then we're on to C. C is the findings. It's about the determination process and the findings. 2, hearings and preliminary hearings and panels. And in C3, there's something that co-chairs want to add about kind of relating to transparency. It's right there. So we'll look at that. We get back to these things. We got C4 is providing information to complainants and officers, and C5 is stipulated discipline, and then D is about discipline itself. We got how to impose discipline. And we'll be coming back to this again after the code comes out. Due process and just cause rules. E is appeals, and I know there's some conversation people want to have around that, and I think we're waiting to have some proposed language before we have that conversation, but people are welcome to bring it up tonight if they want to. And both the complainant and the officer have rights to appeal. 1. 2 is timelines for appeals. E3 is appeal hearings. E4, is there one? Anymore. Okay, so then F is about mediation, and there's some suggestions that came in from Commissioner Glenn that we're going to address later tonight too, once we roll through this again. And there's F1 and then F2 is F2 is the second part of the mediation. And I should point out too that at the very bottom of this document there are recommendations to City Council. This is part of the stuff that we're going to include in our package that's not going to be in the code. But we suggested changing the timelines from 180 days to 183 days and things like that. Is that in this version? Yeah. And there's a bunch of recommendations like that that we included as part of this document. So when we get to the report, that's where those kinds of things will go, I think. All right. So I would like to roll back up to the top to the definition since we already have something recommended there. That's okay, staff. And it's basically, we came across this, I can't remember what the context was, but there are complaints, and we said that a complainant is somebody who either has filed a complaint or was the recipient of misconduct, even if they didn't file a complaint. But then there's also cases that get opened up by the board where maybe there's not a complainant, like if it's a shooting or death in custody and the person's not able to do it, but it's required by the charter. So there's this proposal to add this language for the definition of case here. It says, an incident or situation involving potential misconduct. Cases are either complaints, which are filed by a community member or a PPB officer, or are incidents in which the board is required by law to investigate. So that's the proposal. I see staff has their hand up too, sorry.
Yes.
Victoria.
Thank you. Staff?
Yeah, so there were 3 types of technical edits which were being brought up during reading this over. And by technical edits, confusion in language that could be cleaned up by things that are proposed for members to consider. One was the consistent use of either advocate or complaint navigator. And as Co-Chair Dan mentioned, just picking one and going with that throughout and making advocate sort of a secondary reference there so people can understand it, but referring to that. A second had to do with this case and complaint, and those are both in today's document. There is a third one, which will be coming later about clarifying use of terminology around hearings, and that'll be in a future meeting. But just to explain this one, for those familiar with the transition plan, there's a definition there that there's the transition team, which has two parts under it that are both a part of the transition team. There's the transition staff and the transition volunteers. Similarly, in reading over this document, the text that the commission has already approved effectively uses case to refer to two types of things. There are the automatic investigations required by law somewhere, even if there isn't a community member or officer filing a complaint. And then there are those investigations or mediations or informal complaints initiated by a person filing a complaint. So that's effectively just trying to clarify that here. And then you may note that throughout the document, some but not all of the uses of complaint have been replaced by case when that broader terminology is what the context of the sentence says. So it's not a proposed substantive change, it's just designed to clean up the language, and of course it's up to you whether or not to accept that. Thanks.
Right. So thank you, staff. And so Facilitator Lara, I believe that what we're going to try to do here is see if people are okay with this definition being added, and along with that, making the change throughout the document to every place where complaint needs to be changed to case. Does that make sense?
Yes, that's correct. Since we just review our normal discussion rules, I don't think we need to get back to that. We just review those. And then I will go directly to the questions and edits and ask if any of the commissioners have any comments. Yes, Commissioner Fate.
Hi, good evening. This is Faith Aiken. I use she, her pronouns. I'm one of the commissioners. I think this is a really helpful definition. I'm curious if in the document, there are times when the differentiation between the two different types of cases are helpful. Like if there's a difference in our process, that it would be helpful to understand the type of complaint case. And that would be maybe my only hesitation in just like a unilateral find and replace. Thank you.
Thank you. And I will pass it to staff and then Co-Chair Dan.
Yeah, just to clarify, it wasn't a blanket find and replace. It was specific. I'll show two examples if I may. So there are it's probably an easier way to do this. So there was a need to change complaints to cases on this header because this refers to all of these items which don't require a complaint to be initiated as per the charter. But then if there is an allegation, that is a complaint. So it's the broader term that's necessary there. To give an example of a time that it wasn't changed, cases which do not originate from a complaint, it doesn't make sense to indicate that it wouldn't make sense to say other cases which do not originate from a case. Or another example is if it has to do with something that is being filed by a community member or an officer, when that narrower definition is helpful. And that's what's in here. Someone can speak to that or not, but that just to clarify what it currently shows. Thank you.
Thank you, staff. And Commissioner Fate already make a comment and say it makes sense. Thank you for the explanation. Co-Chair Dan?
Yeah, and it looks like the staff did a really good job finding these. There was one occurrence where it says I think the original language was something about what initiated the complaint, and we changed it to something. Now it says what caused the case or something like that. It doesn't make much sense. And I wanted to find that again. I'm having a hard time navigating my Word fake program. But oh, there it is. It's in C1C. The board may add these additional findings to the systemic aspects of the case, which led to the interaction that led to the investigation. It should say instead of that caused the case. I think.
Thank
See what I
you.
mean?
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's it. That's just led to the investigation is my proposal for that fix right there.
Thank you. Is there additional comments or questions? Yes, Commissioner Faith.
Hi, thanks. That's really helpful, Commissioner Dan and staff. Will we need to subsequently update our documents where we have written complaint moving forward to reflect this language change? So that's first question for me. And then second, related, is in our flow chart, will we need to update the language as well to reflect this change? I think that the flow chart is something that will probably be referenced quite often. So any way we can make it more clear would be great.
Thank you, Commissioner Faith. Staff or any of the co-chairs would like to answer this question? Staff?
Yeah, so the flow chart will get updated as this document's updated. There may be other changes that you choose to make, and so it would need to be updated anyway to reflect that, and that wouldn't need to be something that comes back here. But it would, if there was a need to update any of the areas of agreement, that would be something that could get fixed here or could get fixed in the when the report's approved, because these will all be appendices to the report. Having said that, there are a lot of instances where, especially later in the PAC's run, speaking specifically to the 5th phase of work, where cases was used as the catch-all. So the definition was designed to reflect the word choice you're already using, is I guess the best way to put that. And so hopefully it minimizes for all except maybe access to information, but that can get fixed in the report approval if that's helpful. Thanks.
Thank you. That answer, Co-Chair Dan, go ahead.
Oh, I just have a process question now. So I actually proposed better language right in the area that we're looking at right now. So just say led to the interaction that prompted the investigation. So we're not saying led to twice. So since that's not the change to case, but it's related to it, should we consider this at the same time, or should we come back to it and vote on this separately, do you think, or consent on it separately?
Thank you. I also before, I think together is fine because we're changing that, but I also want to make sure Commissioner Faith feels okay with that answer, or if she has additional questions.
Thank you. I feel great.
Thank you, Commissioner Faith. Okay, I think I can ask the questions for all together, since it's a change on this particular word. And is any additional questions, comments? Okay, let me ask the question for all together, for all the changes that we just made. Is there a strong opposition to changing from what it was to the proposed change? And this has all the changes and what we add as well. Is there a general agreement to changing from what it was to the proposed changes and the addings? Okay. Thank you.
All right, so the next section where we have some proposed changes, wow, is A5. Oh, there's actually this very minor thing here. And I think that is that something we even need to vote on?
I
Changing
did,
Garrity notice?
I think we can do it, and I can do it very fast. Is there
Okay.
any comment, questions, edits? No, let me ask. Is there a strong opposition to changing from what it was to the proposed change? Is there a general agreement to changing from what it was to the proposed change? Oh, and Commissioner Fay, do you have a question? Or you voting?
I'm voting.
I mean, you agreeing. Okay, thank you. Is there a general agreement to the proposed change? If I can see your hands again. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. So let's move on to A5 then. And I only have the numbers here, so I have to see it on the screen so I know what we're talking about. A5, providing information to complaints. Oh, yeah, there's like a single word change in that it's twice. I think it's a should to a shall. It's there in small Roman numeral 2. So it says, however, the staff conducting the intake has some kind of bias or conflict regarding the complainant or nature of the allegations, they instead of should, shall reveal the bias. At that point, another staff member shall complete the intake instead of should. That's a simple word, but instead of just being should, say shall. So the second, do you see the second should, staff?
Thank you. Is there any comment, questions, or additional edits? No? Okay, I'm gonna ask the question. Is there a strong opposition to changing from what it was to the new proposed change? Is there a general agreement to changing from what it was to the proposed change? Thank you. Can we move on? Yes, thank you.
So next one is in B4. And again, if anybody else had other ideas, please say it now, but we'll come back to this document eventually, I promise you. B4 says, I'll go down a little bit further. So this is the part where we talked about giving the Garrity warning to the officer and letting the investigators, our investigators, the board's investigators, talk to the complainant after a deadly force incident when they're done talking to the criminal investigators, but they might skip that. They might say, at the advice of my attorney, I'm not going to do this. So we had language that we just put into access information that we need to insert here. And I'm sorry, staff, I didn't pull it for this meeting, but
This is what was added in the public meeting on Thursday.
yes, I think so. And you have to scroll back. Oh, you're doing two things at once. I think we need to scroll back up to find the place where this goes. Okay. Yeah, it has to go in here somewhere about the criminal investigations and when those investigations are completed. So yeah, right. Yeah, let's just copy that over and then see if it fits where we are. But if y'all don't remember, the problem is that the way we wrote it, the administrative investigators might have to wait until after a grand jury to start doing an investigation, even though right now they can talk to the officers within 48 hours, and we didn't want to make things worse than the way they are now. So I think that, yeah, that's perfect. Yeah, making a separate subsection. We might just need to remove the old number, what looks like it's number 4 now then, because I think we're repeating ourselves there. now we're cutting out the questions of the witnesses. So what's the thing that's crossed out now should say, if there are questions about possible administrative violations, board investigators will ask questions of witnesses. And we've already dealt with the involved officers. Phew.
Okay, is there any additional comments or questions in this proposed change? No? Okay, let me ask the question. Is there a strong opposition to changing from what it was to the proposed change? Is there a general agreement to changing from what it was to the proposed change? Thank you. Can we move on? Okay, thank you.
All right, so the next one I got is C3. We'll see if we can figure out what it is. C1, 2. Okay. Oh, yeah. This is the language that you'll see it. I think you've already got it pasted in here. This is the language that we're hoping to add to the hearings process. That would say. So right now it says if you scroll back up a little bit. I actually think this what you have now as number 2 should go in front of A. Yeah. I think we should take that proposed text and put it at the very beginning of the hearings process. Everything else is going to have to get renumbered, but that's life in the city sometimes. So the idea here is that the first part of the first thing that it says in the hearings process, and it kind of goes back to this discussion we just had about balancing transparency and the ability to get through these hearings. It says the board shall consider the public interest, the officer's preference, precedent set by the existing oversight system, and other relevant factors to decide whether to hold some or part or all of, I think we want to add, to hold part or all of preliminary, full investigatory, disciplinary, or appeals hearings in public or executive session. However, above all, the board will apply applicable federal and state law in its determination of whether part or all of a hearing will be held in public or in executive session. That's some proposed language to balance those interests. Co-chair Michelle Wesley, you helped design that language. Is there anything you want to add?
No, that's good.
Thank you, Co-Chair Charlie and Co-Chair Dan. Is there additional comments? Questions? Okay, if you are ready, I can ask the question. Is there a strong opposition to changing from what it was to the proposed change? Is there a general agreement to changing from what it was to the proposed change? Thank you. Can we move on to the next one? Yes. Okay. Perfect. Thank you.
I saw staff highlighted some other language that's in there that's for being proposed to change. I don't think we should cover that now. I think we should double back to that when we come back to this document, because it's going to require a longer discussion, if that's okay. So then I'd like to move on to F1, and maybe Commissioner Glenn wants to. Do you want to introduce your own proposals?
Sure, I can. No problem.
These are the mediation section, folks.
Okay. Okay. I just wanted to propose some changes and this order is just kind of where I thought it might land. And that's addition that the mediation cost to participants, just to make sure that it's known that it's not going to be any cost to the participants. And then it shall also take place in a neutral environment and location. Just wanted to specify that it won't, people know that it's not going to be at the police station. But if there's some other language that people find better, I'm definitely open to that. Any comments? No? Okay. What would you like to do? Facilitator, you want us to move on or?
Yeah, I can ask the question, but just make sure that nobody has an additional questions or comments or edits to these proposed changes. No? Okay, I can ask the question. Is there a strong opposition to adding this as the proposed change? Is there a general agreement to adding these two as a proposed change? Okay, thank you. Can we move to the next? Thank you.
Okay. This was my last suggestion and I didn't know quite how to word it, but my my concern was making sure that whatever happens in mediation and that agreement is honored by both parties, and if not, how they might resolve that. So as a successful mediation is successful mediation shall be formalized with a confidential agreement signed by all parties with stipulations to be upheld in the agreement. Any part of the agreement that is violated can result in a case referral or a full investigation and or agreed upon actions for violations. So that was just me and my attempt to do a catch-all. So any comments or anything that anyone wants to add, I'm open to hearing that. Thank you.
Thank you. Co-Chair Dan?
I like this. I like the other additions too. What I'm concerned about, and I've been through mediation a couple of times, is that this makes it sound like you can't agree with the officer that you would like to talk about what happened in mediation, which you can do right now. So I just want to make sure to capture that thought somewhere, that stipulations to be upheld in agreement, which may include publicly disclosing what happened, if desired, or something like that. Is that? That way, yeah. If the complainant or the whatever the community member and the officer agreed they weren't going to talk about it, then they should be able to do that.
Yeah, my thought was just I wanted to make sure that the two or however many are in that party is able to have a written agreement, and that neither party can violate that. And if they do, there has to be some kind of resolution to that. And that was just my initial thoughts. I've got this question about formalized. Let me just see. Let me read it again.
And Co-Chair Charlie, and in the meantime, you're reading it again, Commissioner Sophia. In the meantime, you're doing it again. Co-Chair Charlie wants to say something. Co-Chair Charlie?
Thank you. So I'm curious, what if they disagree on the public disclosure? And then I have concern, I don't know how mediation works, and maybe Co-Chair Dan Handelman has some experience around this. Is there something like this that currently happens in mediation where they hold the complainant, hold them I mean, where they can be violated, I don't know, I guess that just sounds concerning to me.
Thank you, Co-Chair Dan. Oh, Commissioner Sophia first and then Co-Chair Dan.
I want to say it just depends on what the mediation is for. I mean, that's why it's between the two parties. You know, they could agree to just end it and do nothing, right? Just have this conversation. Or they could agree that, you know, I don't want to say what, but they can have other agreements to resolve it. So if it's a case that doesn't necessarily warrant a full investigation, there are other things that they could agree on to resolve that issue between them. That's not for us to really to say. It's a contract that they kind of make between each other to solve whatever that issue is. And in my experience with mediation, there is always a signed contract, because if it's not a formal, and I keep using the word formalized agreement, and I'm meaning that when I'm saying formalized, meaning it has to be written down and specified, then what good is the mediation if you don't have an agreement to solve the issue? You got to have something to solve the issue, and it has to be binding to the people who are involved in it, or else they should be able to go back and say, well, this didn't really, you reneged on what our agreement was, so I want to go back. That was just my comments, and let Dan go. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Sophia. Co-Chair Dan?
Well, I think the danger here, which is something that we addressed in the investigation section, that if the community member during this thing says, yeah, I picked up that candy bar in the store but you didn't need to beat me in the head. And the cop said, yeah, I beat you in the head, but you're lucky I didn't taser you because I really felt like tasering you on the face, or something like that. If they say stuff that could get either of them in trouble, it's supposed to be confidential. And so that's why you need to be bound by the confidentiality of the process. I do not know right now what the ramifications would be to community members, but I think because our system is so much more powerful, it'd probably be good to have something in writing to make it really clear.
Thank you, Co-Chair Dan. Co-Chair Charlie?
Well, I'm glad you said that, because that I agree fully with that in this punitive system, I'm just afraid, like, I just don't want to see like some harsh consequences for the complainant. So what I can't think of any wording though. Maybe someone can help out with that. Oops, sorry.
That's okay. Is that, yeah, Commissioner Sophia?
Can I make, well, I don't know if it's quite a suggestion, but I know we talked about this kind of issue that Dan, Co-Chair Dan, so we don't want to be punitive. I know we had that language somewhere else in the document. I was just wondering if that could be used here. I just don't know what it was and where it was, but I just know that we had it somewhere.
Yeah, staff is looking for it.
And maybe we can look at this and, okay, that the investigator, we could not. Yeah.
Yeah, in the meantime, the staff is making some changes. Co-Chair Dan?
Yeah, well, and I know this makes some people bristle when I say this, but because this is a thing where, in theory, you're on equal footing, and I think I requested one time that the officer not come in uniform, and I think that would be best, but if the people can do that, but we'll get to that. The board can figure that part out. Anyway, the thing is, it shouldn't incriminate the complainant or the officer. the complainant in criminal proceedings or the officer for violations, because they chose this in order to avoid the investigation, and the only reason that they get investigated is if they sit there with their arms folded and say, I'm not going to be part of this, you know, blah, blah, blah. So I think we need to put something in about balancing that for the officer too. So the part of the mediation which could, well, I guess any part of the mediation which could incriminate, oh, I see, any party in criminal, well, or administrative proceedings.
Thank you. Commissioner Sophia, do you have any additional comments?
My only thought that I think that may not be covered is the avenue in which, if it is broken, how they would pursue if the agreement is broken. And that's the only thing I don't know if we should spell that out or if we should just leave it in general. It might be another procedure that we may not have to explain. That's it.
And Co-Chair Charlie put the word renegotiate. I want to do a time check. It's 8:40. And we are going to do a public comment and the other items on the agenda. Staff is trying to simplify the language, but there is any additional suggestions or comments for this particular part?
Well, what staff did was they cut out the part that I was trying to add that suggests that the two parties could agree to talk about what they said during mediation. So I want to make sure that doesn't get lost. Even add a sentence to the end of what the staff has there that says the parties may agree to disclose the substance of the mediation.
Okay, is there now, okay, staff?
Just clarifying, are you suggesting, Co-Chair Dan, adding that sentence or leaving it as what you're seeing on screen, or?
Well, here's where I'm confused. I mean, Commissioner Glenn, did you see what the staff posted in the chat? It says, successful mediation will conclude with a signed agreement by all parties. Violation of the agreement may result in the case proceeding to a full investigation and or other next steps as outlined in the agreement itself. Portions of the mediation which could incriminate any party in criminal or administrative proceedings will be considered confidential. And my suggestion was to then add one more sentence that says, the parties may agree to publicly disclose the substance of the mediation, just to not lose that idea. Does that cover everything you were worried about?
Yes.
Co-Chair Michelle Wesley, okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Is there any additional comments or suggestions or edits? Okay. I can yes, thank you, staff. Okay, I can ask the question. Is there a strong opposition to adding and changing this for what it was to the proposed changes? Is there a general agreement to changing from what it was to the proposed changes? Thank you. Can we move on to the next?
Yeah, well, that concludes this document. And so folks, we were supposed to look at the transition plan too. And we don't have, as far as I know, any specific proposed changes to that document. Do you think we should walk through it in case it triggers somebody's, well, trigger is not a good word, just in case it makes somebody think of something they want to add or change? Or do you think we should just put that off until we have more feedback on that plan? Because there's going to be some discussions about that between now and our next public meeting, I think. Any preference? Should we just kind of do a quick walkthrough? I can't see anybody now. I've been.
There is Commissioner Fate.
Okay.
I think we will have the opportunity to review it one more time next week. So since we just recently passed this document, my recommendation is we wait until next week when we have had the opportunity to review.
Other co-chairs, that's all right? Yeah. Co-chair Hussaini, yes, no? Okay.
Commissioner Catherine has a question.
Yeah, so one thought I had about the transition plan, maybe people can think of is, I think we said that people were not going to be eligible for the transition team if they wanted to sit on the board of the new entity, so that if you wanted to be a volunteer member of the transition team that was mutually exclusive, would then potentially becoming a member of the board. And I think that makes a lot of sense for the initial board. But what I wondered about is whether we should be a little bit more flexible about subsequent iterations of the board once the initial board has been chosen and the transition team has helped with that. It seems to me that we might want to be in a position to welcome people who volunteered for the transition team initially to then later join the board. So it's just something to think about. It would require a change to the document. And maybe that's something we can talk about when we talk about the document next week. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Catherine. Staff?
Co-chair of that subcommittee, I guess, Catherine, this might be already covered. It says recuse themselves from the initial appointment. I don't know if that's clear enough. It might be something that benefits from clearer language to explicitly say the other way, but I'm not sure if that addresses your question or concern.
Well, that definitely, if people interpret that as allowing people to subsequently volunteer for the board, then that would address my question. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Catherine. Is there any comments or questions before? Yes, Commissioner Yumi.
Sorry, I was trying to find the unmute button. I think that seems like it would be an easy fix just to stipulate a time limit if there's concern about it. So, you know, a year, 2 years, whatever people feel comfortable with.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other comments or questions?
Commissioner Glenn has her hand up.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Yamida. Go ahead, Commissioner.
Thank you. I just wanted to say that, you know, maybe it could be an easy fix just to put, not for the initial board, but just, open for subsequent board seats. So, I mean, you could just add that a little bit on there to make sure it's clear. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more additional comments, questions? Okay, if it's co-chair, is there any of the co-chairs would like to make a last comment or additional comments, or can we move on to the next item on the agenda? No? Okay. We can, and I may be wrong, but I think we can go to the next item on the agenda. There's a general public comment. Okay. We will now take open public comment on the issues that PAC is discussing, or community members can also tell their story about policing and police accountability. We ask members of the public to keep their comments or questions to 3 minutes in length and raise their hand in Zoom if you like to speak. Now's the time that we invite members of the public to raise their hand and speak. No, I don't see any. We're gonna give a little more time. No, I don't think any public comment tonight. Then the next item and the agenda is next steps, and I will pass it to the co-chairs.
Oh, well, are we starting with member curiosities, or are we starting with the?
Yeah, with member curiosities.
Okay, let's start with member. There are some next steps items that staff and I are sort of trying to put together behind the scenes. So, member curiosities is where we talk about either we have questions about stuff that normally related to the commission, but maybe not, or something that you want to talk about that you saw in the news, or an event you have coming up you want to let people know about, and we want to make sure that people talk for no longer than 1 minute each, and not everybody's going to get to talk because we want to close this out by 9 o'clock tonight. Woohoo! That'll be awesome, huh? So, anybody who's got a member curiosity, raise your hands now.
Thank you, Co-Chair Dan. Commissioner Jumi?
Yeah, and Dan, you might be planning on talking about this in next steps, but I guess one thing that occurred to me looking at our timeline before this meeting was just, I think our phase of work concludes August 31st, but this obviously won't go to council until after that point. So I guess what happens after we take off our PAC hats and still have, kind of stuff pending before council. I'd be curious to know a little bit about what things look like on September 1st, I guess. Doesn't necessarily have to be at this meeting.
Thank you, Commissioner. And there's something, I don't know, yes, Commissioner Faith.
Similar question. I'm just curious if our council date has been confirmed. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Faith. There's a couple of questions. I will pass it to staff.
The council date for the post August 31st consideration is not set at all. I know that that's something that is being discussed, but I don't know anything more than that at present. However, on a different note, while we have the floor here, on August 16th at 9:45 a.m., the PAC will be presenting its quarterly report to City Council. Now that is the quarterly report for April to June 2023. So that's not part of responding to Commissioner Faith's question, but it is a council date coming up. As soon as the council timelines for post August 31st are known, we'll definitely be telling members as soon as possible. Thanks.
Thank you. Any additional questions or comments? No? Okay. Coach Dan and then staff.
Well, staff might be about to say this, but we talked a little bit about what we are allowed to do while we're still commissioners versus when we're not commissioners anymore. And as soon as we're not, August 31 is written into the resolution that said when our terms end. So after that, we're allowed to say, pretty much whatever we want while we're still commissioners. And I'm part of a 501c3, and we have to be careful about how we approach city council matters anyway. But we're allowed to say, hey, community members, right now, we need you to go to city council and let them know what you think about our proposal, right? if you are not encumbered by other stuff after September 1st, you might be able to say, hey, City Council, I think you should vote for this thing. So that's, that's, I think the big difference is that right now we're city officials and we shouldn't say that we think people should tell City Council what to do.
Thank you, Co-Chair Dan. Any additional suggestions or comments?
I guess the
Yeah, staff, go ahead.
I guess the only thing to add there is, although technically, there's no obligation to come to meetings or anything after August 31st. Certainly, council wants to hear from subject matter experts when they consider proposals before them. So certainly all of the members of the PAC are subject matter experts on the PAC's proposals. So, it would be a possibility, of course, that you would be a good resource for council in hearing your thoughts or your explanations when that goes there, but can't be more specific than that yet until we know what's going on timeline wise.
Thank you, staff. Co-Chair Dan?
Right, so just in terms of next steps, I mean, you're not going to be able to understand this too well, but this is my calendar for the rest of the month. And what it shows is that we have a executive session on Monday, and then we have meetings on the 10th, 14th, 17th, 21st, 24th, 28th, and then the 31st, we have to be done. And I would think that we might have some long evenings in front of us, and we haven't really talked about this with as co-chairs with staff, but we may need to look at having a marathon meeting among those to make sure we can get through, because we have to do the package first of City Code. We have to do the report to City Council that includes the recommendations like the one we flashed on the screen before that aren't part of code yet, but maybe should be in the future. And then there's a thing that is outlined in the document that created us that says we can present a minority report. And we talked about this today among the co-chairs and staff, that it doesn't say the minority report is people who voted against the package. It just says that they should express minority opinions. So the way that we're seeing this is that, hopefully we won't have anybody voting against our package, but hope that people who had, ideas that didn't make it all the way through the commission, that want to just put those down briefly to City Council in a package from that's called a minority report, or if you vote against the package and you want to explain why, that would be so it's not a minority report in the sense of what happens at the Supreme Court or anything like that. It'd be more like a place where people would say, oh, well, this idea was one that I brought forward. It didn't get supported by the full commission, but I just wanted to make sure you heard it. So that's something we want to make sure is possible for commissioners to do. And I guess everybody should think strategically about how to use that so that doesn't, we don't lose whatever united voice we have. But I think it's also important that just because we agreed to be part of a commission that's working on a consensus basis, that we don't lose our voices.
Thank you, Co-Chair Dan. Any additional comments or questions for member curiosities from the commissioners or the co-chairs? Okay, staff, do you have any comments for next steps on member curiosities?
The only thing, just to reiterate something that Co-Chair Dan said, some of these meetings will be running along. We're starting to note that the expected ones in the emails that go out, just to try and give some clarity there and some reasonable expectation. Additionally, there will be a meeting time slot that at some point will be converted into a public hearing, which is still a public meeting, but it is designed to hear from the public on the draft. So it's one way to consider it, sort of colloquially. I'm not sure if this is a legal definition, but is a public meeting that is effectively all public comment and Q&A. So that's something that's coming, and you'll get a date on that soon. And then if co-chairs and or staff or legal counsel feel another executive session is necessary, that might also happen. But simply kind of just thinking ahead, that it'll be 6:30 to 9 every Monday and Thursday. The rest of the way is a good assumption to make. And then what exactly happens within that, if maybe a part of it's executive session and part of it's not, that maybe changes a little bit closer. But in general, just kind of the overall timeline is probably best assumed to be 6:30 start times the rest of the way on Mondays and Thursdays. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any additional, otherwise I will pass to garden plots. I'm gonna give another chance to any question, comment, no? Okay, let's go to the next item on the agenda for the conclusion is the garden plot. This is a time for facilitators, co-chairs, and staff to summarize any items already brought up today, which didn't fit into today's agenda. We'll recap those items here and use them and develop future agendas. We won't be using this time to add new items, not previously mentioned, or to discuss any items, but we will use the list to develop future agendas so these items can be addressed. Co-chairs, do you have anything for the garden plot? No, thank you. Facilitator, are you meeting? No, thank you. Staff?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. As a reminder, you can submit advanced public comment to the Police Accountability Commission via web form, voicemail, or postal mail. Thank you for all the members who attended today's meeting and for your contributions today. Thank you also for the interpreters to making this meeting more accessible to all. And finally, thank you to the members of the community for attending. If you are not already signed up for email updates, please also sign up to receive updates from the PAC. The next meeting on the Police Accountability Commission will be an executive session held pursuant to ORS 192.660 from 6:30 to 9 on Monday, August 7. It is now 9 p.m. and this meeting has been adjourned.